Hi, everybody. This is Christian-basel with Mark-Who42, and we just want to take the time to thank everybody who's contributed to our show to ensure that we continue to bring you the latest news, reviews, and interviews throughout the Whoniverse and beyond, like our friends at Audible.com. Right now, you can actually go there and get a free 30-day trial and a free download. Just simply go to audibletrial.com/Mark-Who42 and sign up, and that's all you have to do. And if you'd like to contribute directly to the show, go to www.mark-who42.net and hit the donate button on the far right-hand side. Contribute whatever you can give us so that we can bring you this show. Thank you again for everybody who contributes, and thank you for listening.
Hey everybody, this is Chris-Harrelson. I am a featured walker on seasons 5 and 6 of The Walking Dead, and you're listening to Mark-Who42.
Hello everyone, greetings and welcome to Mark-Who42, going to the Whoniverse and beyond. I am currently your show host, Christian-basel, and with me as ever are...
Patricia-helm.
And Eduardo-m-freyre. And all I gotta say is Sebastian never warned about this being under the sea. Darn it.
And the big bug eyes swimming around there. Well, as you can see, folks, we are going to be talking about the episode that just premiered a while back, Under the Lake, which was really, well, we'll talk about that. And later on in the episode, we will have an interview with Chris-Harrelson from AMC's The Walking Dead, the premiere walker. We're going to have that interview later on in the show. But first, I think I hear the 11th Doctor.
Hello! And now it's time again to go to the Whoniverse and beyond with Mark-Who42 news correspondent Patricia-helm. Patricia, Who-the-man? Sorry, Patricia, I won't say that again. That wasn't cool. Unlike bow ties, which are, as you know, cool. Patricia, why don't you cheer yourself up by having a nice bowl of fish fingers and custard?
All right. One of the news stories that came out this week is pretty interesting. There's apparently going to be a new Doctor Who spin-off, and it's going to be called Class. It's going to be taking place at Coal Hill School. And it's going to be
another spin-off that we haven't added to this. What are we up to now, 6 or 7 after this?
I don't know.
But some of the other ones aren't on anymore. But this one is going to appeal to young adults, and it takes place in contemporary London, and it's going to be basically what it's like to grow up in the world of Doctor Who.
Well, Mark, I and Ed could tell you that.
Yeah, well, given what we've seen for the past 9 seasons, it's pretty damn stressful. You know, we got to evacuate at Christmas again. Oh, what is it this time? Oh, it's a meteor full of what looks like carnivorous alien reindeer. Oh, all right. We haven't had that before, have we? No.
Going through that terrible wilderness years where nothing had happened at all. Nothing at all, except Big Finish. Thank you guys over there.
Should be interesting. It's going to be 8 45-minute episodes. They're going to start filming next spring, and it'll be sometime next year, I'm guessing probably towards the fall. And now there's been some speculation that one of the reasons why they're making this is there's a so-called ratings crisis going on in the UK. Apparently Doctor Who's not doing as well as it normally does, although I'm not sure if that's true. And apparently the rating figures have not been great for the UK, but they've been great everywhere else. And so I'm not sure why they would feel they would need to do this. I mean, what do you guys think?
I don't know, because is it a change in attitude or a change in technology? Because one of the things we've been reading, and Mark sent us something called Who Feed, which showed that if you really take everything, including the BBC iPlayer, which seems that BBC doesn't even acknowledge these days, that the final ratings for the entire tally were like 8.8. So maybe they didn't see it at the actual premiere when it happened and went online, but with the repeats, the iPlayers and all that, people watched. People saw that. So especially when you look on our rating figures at the BBC America, there were almost 2 million. They set records against not only other shows, but other networks. So it's confusing. Is it because maybe the UK's losing lackluster in its own series, but internationally it's gone completely ape? What do you think, Ed?
I think really it boils down to what are the powers that be thinking and what is their mindset. And it's not just talking the BBC, because this is a problem that has been around for a few years now. Since the advent of things like the DVR, like being able to watch stuff online, it's pretty clear that the people on the top don't know how to gauge this this, how to react to it.
How long have DVRs been around? Were they around when Doctor Who premiered in 2005?
I don't think so.
And I think BBC iPlayer wasn't around with Eccleston, right? I think it came in its fruition.
Because they're saying that, that when it premiered in 2005, then overnight viewers were 10.8 million. But I mean, not only was Doctor Who, that was its first show coming back since 1989, but if there were no DVRs and no BBC iPlayer, that was your one chance to see it.
Modern technology, it's helped, but it's hurt in the sense that it helps so that now you're no longer tied to the television so much. I have things to do. I can't watch Doctor Who on Saturday when it comes on BBC. Oh, but wait, I can program my TV, my DVR will record it, and I can watch it Sunday morning. Or, I'll watch it when it comes on the BBC iPlayer, or I'll download it when it's on iTunes. We're now not for choice when it comes to watching our favorite programs. And the thing is that there are those kind of at the top level that don't know how to react. They don't know, do we consider it a failure that people didn't watch it exactly when it aired? They don't know how to gauge this. Like and it's not a good or bad thing. It's just they don't know. They're still trying to figure out, how do we call this? How do we call the game?
That's an interesting thought too, because is it unfair for people who couldn't make it, or now we have the modern convenience of, I can't catch it right then. I'm with family, I'm with friends, I'm out on a date or whatever. But now I can watch it anytime I want to, but it might be 2 days after which that's not going to count. I have to actually be sitting in front of the TV at the moment it premieres. If that's the case, then it doesn't seem fair for Doctor Who to do that, especially what we saw from WhoFeed. Yeah. A total of 8.8 million. I mean, that's higher than I think some of the ones from Matt Smith's time, if you count that at all. So I don't think this is a ratings failure, especially if you see what's happening internationally, especially here at BBC America. It's not a failure at all. It's doing well.
Doctor Who was never an autumn show. It was always premiered around Easter and went through most of the summer.
Aye.
And with an autumn time slot, it's up against shows in the UK that are really popular, like the X Factor, Strictly Come Dancing, and also the Rugby World Cup.
Which I've been reading.
So it's competing against a lot of things, and people are going to be watching those and DVRing Doctor Who.
Which I actually was reading in other blogs. They said that, from my friends in the UK, they mostly said they think the number one issue was it didn't start back at Easter. It started at the end of the year, and that's what's killing it right now as far as being the first show to watch. They're watching games or they're watching something else, and then they go back to Doctor Who, as opposed to where Doctor Who was the number one thing. And that's what Matt Smith was hitting at. He was starting his episodes runs in Easter.
Yeah, and with rugby and stuff like that, people get together in pubs and stuff to watch this together as groups. Like, you're going to say, oh, sorry, you guys, I can't do that tonight. I'm going to go watch Doctor Who live instead.
Right.
No. You're going to tape it, or you're going to watch it on the iPlayer later. Yeah, they need to take into account, because like this one's saying, last week's episode, it was only seen by 3.7 million overnight, and that's the worst since 1989 when the show was canceled. But of course, in 1989, the only way to record it is if you had a VCR and you had set it to tape it, stuff like that. Most of the time people watched it live. So I think that they need to take into account everything before they make any decisions.
I don't think anybody can argue about that. It's just having to sit somebody down and explain how this works. This is more top level people. This is more, people who sit behind the conference table, don't know how to react to this. They don't know, they just don't know. For good or for ill, they don't know. And it's just, how do you get the message across? Like, it's not a failure if people don't watch live. It's a failure if they don't watch live and then they don't blitz iPlayer, DVR, etc., etc. Having them understand how this modern technology works.
I think I agree with both of you. I think our view of the ratings and the way people see things has not caught up to the technology that is out there. I really still don't think we're going to head into a wilderness period again. If there is, we might have the lull, but again, that's from the mirror.
Yeah.
So I'm taking it as a grain of salt until the day that BBC goes, you know what, we might pull off another David Tennant where we just have 4 episodes this year. But I still don't foresee that being a problem. I still think it is the best show they've got. I think BBC America has proven that is now an international success, and I don't think it's gone anywhere anytime soon. Trish, is there anything else in the news?
No, not really. No. Awesome. And that's really all that's, what else?
Right.
That's all.
It's kind of a melting pot of all the news that we wanted to discuss there, but since we're going to go ahead and hit the ground running, let's go into the lake.
Or is that under the lake?
Or under the lake, yeah. I'm sorry. Now, folks, if you have not seen Under the Lake, please stop this episode. Or if you want to listen, you can. It's just going to sound a little bit weird, and you get a little spoiler thing going on under there, and we're not going to hit the spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Under the Lake, go ahead and pause this now. Take a look at the episode whenever you can, and then come right back to us. And now we're going to start talking about the episode. We're going to dive right in. So let's let the three of us go under the lake. And I'm just going to say this. I think this episode could have easily fit in Series 8. Just like another crown jewel in that mess of a crown in Series 8. But I'll leave that up to you guys.
You know what? I'm going to go Socratic method on you. I'm going to answer your statement with a question. Why do you think it would fit in Season 8?
I think it was so close, which I think is ironic because after the episode premiered, the first episode after that was Listen, which I think there was a lot of info dump, a lot of it, a ton of info dump from the episode. A lot of strong characters were developed and a lot of things were going on. But as you said about another episode, it was like a Chinese buffet. I had a lot, but I don't feel fulfilled of what was going on. Of course, it is a cliffhanger episode, and what we saw at the ending is really pulling my interest to say, okay, I'm going to see the next episode. It took a while for me to sink in, and I'm not the brightest bulb in the light box, the sharpest tool in the shed. I actually had to watch it 2 or 3 times, and I caught on a few things that are mostly there. But for me, I just felt like there was a lot of info dump and nothing for me to carry on. I actually thought when I saw it the first time around it was kind of slow. Then the second and third time I saw it, it kind of picked up a little bit, but not after I saw it the first time. I just thought it was running slow. Then again, BBC America was throwing commercials left and right, so it kind of slowed things down.
Yeah.
But I think in retrospect, that's what it felt like. I was just being dumped on with a lot of food and eating my gourd, enjoying it, and then going like, oh, okay. But I think it's going to be one of those things where the second episode is going to have to redeem itself. But for right now, it felt like Listen. It felt like there was a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I just couldn't grasp at it. But I'm hoping that the next episode will wrap it up in a nice little package that I can say, oh, okay, now I get it. Yes.
Okay, I don't think it was like Listen. If anything, it felt to me like what Dark Water should have been. You know, if I'm going to compare it to anything in Season 8, it would be Dark Water, in the sense that Dark Water, the bulk was just set up, and you're waiting for something to happen, and then when something does happen, that's when they pull the to be continued on you. This felt like a better version. In other words, okay, there's still questions, it still ends on a cliffhanger, but stuff happens. You know, stuff moves the story along. You're actually thinking. You're looking at the carvings on the wall and you're going, okay, what could they mean? You know, you're paying attention to the ghosts and how their mouths are moving but no sound is coming out, and you're trying to think, what could they be saying? Every single little mystery, your brain is engaging. You're actually going, okay, what could this lead to? So when the cliffhanger came, you're not going, wait, that was it? That was an entire 45 minutes? No, you're going, whoa, I want to see where this goes next.
I kind of see where both of you are coming from, but, you know, I agree with Christian. I did feel like there was a lot of information being dumped on us with this. But yeah, it is what Dark Water should have been too, because there was a lot more action, a lot more stuff going on, and I'm still trying to decide whether or not I liked it. Of course, I want to see what's going to happen next week, but I saw a lot of interesting little details through here that I do want to discuss. So, I mean, when the opens at this underwater mining facility. It's up in Scotland. And I thought that was interesting. You know, why Scotland? So I looked up the place where it was supposed to be, Caithness, Scotland. Caithness is the most northern county in the country of Scotland. It's right at the very tip, at the edge up there. And I did a little research and found out that a lot of Norse settlers settled there in the 10th century. And there was a big dispute over who owned it, whether it was Scotland or Norway. And finally became full Scotland in 1266. But it made me think of the next story that we're going into, which we know the next story is going to be about Vikings. So I'm thinking, is there something going on with this that is leading into that? What do you guys think?
That's a good possibility.
You know what? Maybe. Let's see what happens with the Doctor's time trip for the next episode, because while it may not be a direct, there might be something that bleeds over.
You're going to laugh at this, but I actually thought it was a joke on Capaldi because of him being Scottish, and when I saw it was Scotland, I'm like, Scotland's underwater now? That was the first thing out of my mind, like, Scotland? So I didn't know if they were playing a poor joke on Peter. There was just like, yeah, your country ends up underwater, pal.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't know. It's like, Scotland? It would be like saying Miami, Florida. I'm like, what? I guess it's underwater now.
Well, don't joke. If the ice caps melt anymore, you might just get your wish with that. And I have to visit my relatives by boat or submarine.
Or submarine.
Yeah.
So they found this craft, and they assume that it's been there for a while, but even though there is no corrosion on it and everything, and I don't know, I personally think it just got there.
We're dealing with alien tech, so sometimes with things like this, the rules don't apply. It could have gotten there around the time of the flooding, but if this is alien tech, we can't assume that since it's been underwater that it has corrosion and barnacles and whatnot. This is an alien vessel.
Whatever it is, it made the TARDIS go completely ape. The TARDIS started hitting off the cloister bell. It couldn't translate. It wanted to leave, and then he had to put on the handbrake. So the TARDIS is going.
Now wait.
So
now
something wrong there.
Now hold on. Now this is the thing I don't understand. Did the TARDIS start going bananas when they got there, or is it that the TARDIS was drawn to something, it landed, and then it was like, oh crud, I should not have come here. Let's go away. Let's leave. Let's leave now.
Well, when the TARDIS first landed, the doctor, the first thing he says is, "Why are you unhappy?" He says that to the TARDIS.
Which is interesting because if we go back to the doctor's wife, the TARDIS lands there. It already knows what's going to happen. So why did it land there in the first place? But it looked like maybe the TARDIS had to go there and had to do this and was putting off the sirens going, listen, it's like going to a party you don't want to be going to because of the people there. It's just like, no, I don't want to go. But you still have to go anyway for whatever reason. And it felt like that's what it was. It was like, doctor, I'm bringing you here. You have to do something, but I really don't like what's going on here. And the TARDIS freaked out.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we find out that it used to be a military base with a dam that overlooked it. The dam broke and flooded it, and that was in the 1980s. This is 2119, and they said about 20 years prior, which would be about 2100, they discovered, an oil reservoir in there, and they were there to get after the oil. The 1980s, that was, significant time for Doctor Who, right? The classic series.
The tail end of it, we had the tail end of Baker, we had all of the 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Wasn't there some Loch Ness Monster stories too? That's all I could think of too with Scotland, and they're underwater.
Well, I did some research. The Loch Ness Monster has been brought up at least twice in Doctor Who. First time with the first appearance of the Zygons, and then another in a 6th Doctor story.
Time Lash.
Yeah, in Time Lash. But yeah, as far as the Loch Ness Monster itself in real life history, the first reported sightings were, I think, 1800s, with a sighting that has been called, okay, this is probably a Loch Ness Monster sighting in the 6th century. So it predates a lot of what's going on. And I think Caithness is actually north of Loch Ness. I think Loch Ness is it's kind of to the north, but not as north as Caithness.
And in their cafeteria, they had a mural on the wall. Did you guys notice that? It was of, some snake-like monster type thing attacking a Viking ship. And I know from the trailers we've seen, there is some kind of creature like that coming up at some point.
Yep.
But I did find it interesting, that the ghost, the first ghost that appears, is in old-timey clothing, and old-style beard and hat and everything. So
he looks like what Abraham Lincoln and a leprechaun got together, and it just looked evil. Like, wow, what the heck is that?
Why don't they have eyes? That's the part that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Why don't they have eyes? Is it because of the... Well, okay, the thing is, when they see the carvings, every time someone looked at the carvings, they would show, it reflected in their eyes. That must have something to do with it. That's also the reason why Lund didn't get killed. Of course, when the Doctor and Clara first come, those two ghosts come up to them and they don't do anything to them. They just stare at them really closely, and then they turn and leave and kind of lead them to the ship. And then as soon as they go into the ship and look at the carvings and you see it reflected in both of their eyes, then all of a sudden they start attacking them. It's like they have to see those carvings first in order to be attacked. There's something there.
Before they become a transistor, they have to read the message.
Well, they have to be magnetized because we find out later that they're magnets. So there's something there. And the one guy, Lund, he's the only one of them that hasn't seen the carvings.
Yeah, neither has the one who Lund has to translate for, the deaf girl.
No, she went in there.
But she was afraid to. When the whole team went in there, she was like, I'm not going in.
Somehow she's keyed into something that she knew enough to warn Lund. Now, speaking of the other other characters. Well, first off, the commanding officer that got killed in the beginning, Moran, did either of you recognize him?
He looks familiar to me, but I'm not sure.
The actor who played Moran, he was in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. He was Commissioner Loeb, the one who came before Jim Gordon. So I thought I had recognized him in the tiny bit that we saw of him alive, and I was like, where's that guy from? And, I looked it up, and it's like, yeah, he was in the Nolan trilogy. And then the other guy to get killed, Pritchard. Did anybody else? I mean, he kind of reminded me of like Paul Reiser in Aliens and Giovanni Ribisi in Avatar. That same sort of corporate guy hanging out with all these military types who obviously is more concerned with the bottom line than anything else. I got to admit, I was surprised when he got killed so early, but then a part of me was like, yeah, die! I don't know, what do you guys think?
He just worried about the money. Like, when the doctor asked how come you guys didn't evacuate? And he's like, well, we got $1 trillion worth of equipment down here. And if things go bad, they're not the ones that lose their bonus. It's like, oh, wow, that's so much worth more than your life. Okay. We'll know exactly where you're coming from.
When the doctor mentions the power cell, he's like going, and how valuable, powerful is it? It's like, wow, dude, we can hear the ka-ching in your head, like all the way from over here, buddy. Of
course, and that leads right into his death when, he decides to go take a walk outside, in the water to see if he can find this power cell. And then he doesn't realize that the ghosts had switched the mode of the computer from day to night so they could come out, and he got killed.
What's interesting over here, that character, the evil Abraham leprechaun character, brings back the Tivolians. Does anybody remember where the Tivolians came from?
That was a question I was going to ask because he said from planet Tivoli, and I was wondering, was that from a classic episode?
Not a classic.
That was a modern day classic. A Tivolian was introduced in God Complex,
which was Gibbous, played by David Williams, the mole creature. Yeah. So it's not the only time. It's the most conquered planet in civilization. That's how those people lasted so long, because pay homage to anybody who conquers them. Doesn't matter to them.
That's right. And I remember that little mole guy, he was such a coward, and that's what the doctor said they were. They were cowards. He didn't understand why they were being so violent.
Now, see, this could tie into the ship. He could have been part of the crew that crashed, and then maybe he was, before Captain Mutton Chops died, he could have had something to do with the ship. Maybe he was sort of an indentured servant. Maybe when whatever's in that capsule went into suspended animation, his job was, okay, now you're going to watch over it. And since they're just a conquered people, it's like, okay, I'm just going to sit here, twiddle my fingers, and look like, Or
here's the other thing. That poor ghost guy might have been trapped there for a long time, looking for other people to make into ghosts to help with sending out that signal. If he's in that old-timey garb and everything, maybe whenever that thing crashed, who knows? Maybe it was back in the Victorian or whatever period of clothing that he's in. And maybe he was the one responsible for breaking the dam, trying to flood it to kill a bunch of people to try to get the signal going. But maybe they all evacuated before they could die. But it doesn't make sense that, if something was to go that wrong and that no one died, considering that it looks like he's the only ghost.
I was going to say that since Toby-Whithouse also wrote the God Complex, he just wanted a creature from the old, from his old episode, yeah. Since Toby,
remember this other cool episode I wrote?
yeah. I was just like, oh, okay. Well, I want to bring back them. I think because I really haven't established them too much. So he wrote this and that one. So I'm like, hey, I just want an old guy to come back.
But you know what? You do bring up a big question, Trish, which is, we know that the flood occurred in the 80s. We know that. That's fact. That's been cemented. What we don't know is, when did that ship crash? Did it crash right before the flood, or was it there for a while? I think we've been led to assume it crashed right before the flood, but it may have been around a lot longer based off Mutton Chop Ghost.
Here's the other thing. Okay, when they go back in the ship, when the doctor's figuring it out and, finds the power cell missing, but that's not the only thing that's missing. The other thing is the suspended animation capsule for the pilot. And that they find in the church inside the village. But where in relationship to the ship was the capsule, and how did it get moved?
It is possible that Mr. Mutton Chop, when he was alive, hired some people to carry it and bring it into the church.
Maybe they thought it was a coffin.
Maybe
they thought it was a coffin, and where else would you bring a coffin but to a church?
That is a possibility. He could have done is just said, oh, my name is Lord so-and-so, and in this coffin is my cousin, brother, wife, whatever, fill in the blank, take it to the church so we can have a proper ceremony, or, could have BS'd his way.
Or could have been that the message is a rescue, and they're using the bodies of people to get out the signal that, hey, rescue me. but they need a bunch of people in a submarine to come down and boost the signal out there for him to be rescued, because the directions are written on the ship.
What are the 4 words, Trish?
The dark, the sword, the forsaken, the temple. You know, the doctor says the dark is space. The sword is Orion's sword, that when you line it all up, Earth is really like the tip of the sword or something. And then forsaken would be the empty or abandoned town, which would be the village. The temple is the church in the village. Although I think that's such a big stretch.
Yeah, you know, well, actually, here's the thing. The forsaken could probably have a double meaning. Because if Christian's right, if this is a rescue, the forsaken could mean the village, or it could mean whoever's in the box, in the suspended animation capsule. Maybe they got separated from their group, had to crash land, and then this is a signal going, guys, I'm alive, I'm here, come pick me up.
That's why I think that's where the markings come from. I don't know how, and it is a bit of a stretch of a statement, but it seems like the puzzle's fitting in that direction where, hey, I've crash landed, I'm writing on this wall to hopefully send out a signal later on to come rescue me. I'm stuck in this temple, and this is where my box will be to come pick me up. So instead of something that the doctor was projecting that it could be, you know, a request for an invasion, maybe it's a rescue. But the guy didn't know how to, or whoever's in that, or whatever's in that box, didn't know how to send out the signal, and that was the only way they could do it. Unfortunately, it had to claim the lives of people in the station and the cowardly guy, our leprechaun.
Right, our leprechaun friend, or God knows, maybe, you know, maybe the Tivolians have a copy of Sweeney Todd and he was auditioning.
No.
Hey, the costume works.
One thing that was funny in this episode was when the doctor first meets the crew and Len wants to interpret for Cass, but the doctor's like, no, I got it. I know how to do it. And then he said, when he speaks, he says, he tells her to go ahead, but she looks confused, and I know a couple of signs in sign language, and I know what he said to her. He said, "You're beautiful." It's like, well, no wonder she looked confused. Then when she starts signing, you know, the doctor doesn't. He's like, oh, I guess I don't know how to do it. Oh, it's been deleted for semaphore. Give me some flags.
Nice.
But he looks totally annoyed that he lost that for semaphore.
Must be like one of these regenerational things.
One of the things that he lost.
It's interesting because I still go back to the Fifth Doctor when he mentions that he has to wear glasses, the brainy specs, because one of his eyes are nearsighted. So when he regenerates, does he come with a flaw? Like the Third Doctor coming out of the shower with a tattoo on? I mean, does he come up not necessarily, you know, pure body, but maybe it comes out a little more human than it should?
Well, he has, I think the Fifth Doctor was the one who said, you know, that's the thing with regenerations, you never know what you're going to get. I think it might be that randomness, in the sense that when you regenerate, you know, you might be young, old, man, woman. There might just be this sense of randomness that there are certain things that you get to keep, certain skills that you lose. It may just be a random quality to it. I know that the Third Doctor's tattoo, at least in spin-off media, they've said it was sort of a little criminal brand, kind of saying, hey, you know, this guy's a criminal. Although, didn't Moffat kind of retcon that in Time Crash? Because the 10th Doctor did say, oh, the brainy specs, I know you don't need them, you just use them to look smart.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, too. I mean, he kind of retcons it, but, I mean, he mentions it. And then Moffat retcons it later on. But the Seventh Doctor, he can play the spoons, but the 12th Doctor can play an axe, none of which we've seen in the predecessors. So do they pick up skills all of a sudden? Or do they learn the skills? Or do they have something that comes up? Or, you know, one Doctor has this talent, but the next one doesn't, like Venetian Aikido? I mean, we saw that in the 12th Doctor. Or at least he knows how to hand chop.
Could be they pick up skills, and then some might just get lost due to regenerational trauma. It's weird. It's weird. It's kind of one of these things we could debate this till doomsday.
The 10th Doctor had an issue at one point with Martha Jones and Captain Jack Harkness where he doesn't know how to be polite. He's eating peanut butter with his finger out of a jar, and then when Chenta is telling them that her civilization, she's the last of her kind, was wiped out, 10th Doctor goes, oh yeah, the conglomeration, and then Martha goes, or no, Captain Jack says, you're supposed to say sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Now we've got flashcards from Clara.
Yeah.
And like, this is what you're really supposed to be saying.
By the way, did you catch the Easter eggs in those flashcards?
I was trying to pause it. I didn't get a chance, but do enlighten us there, yeah.
Okay, well, there was one flashcard. It was like, I'm sorry, don't worry, you're not going to get killed, upgraded, exterminated. It was this long list associated with different Doctor Who monsters. One that I caught, there was a reference that said, I know you don't live in Aberdeen, you live in South Croydon, referring to the fact that when he dropped off Sarah Jane, the TARDIS missed the mark by a significant margin.
Nice.
So I just thought that was I thought that was cute.
But why does he need the cards, though? I know he does have a little bit of because he is the intellectual mind in the room. Sometimes he doesn't know how to have that emotional attachment to people to say sorry, even though the 10th Doctor said it in almost every other sentence. But what do you think, Trish? Like the 12th Doctor needing those cards, when after he had the previous episode with Davros, tell me the name of the child who's going to live today.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. It seemed like in the last episodes, he was more emotional, and then this one, he's just so cut and dry. And he was even flattering Clara in the last episode, And so I agree with you. I'm just like, I don't understand why he needs the cards, especially if he has to be reminded to use them.
Was she carrying them or was he carrying them? I forgot.
No, he was carrying them.
He was carrying them. She was the one who said, okay, bring out the cards. This did give me, I gotta say that there were times in this episode where the Doctor, to me, felt like now he's being his own Doctor. I know I complained with the 2 previous episodes, there were moments that felt a little bit more 11-ish. But there were times where it felt like, okay, now he's being the Doctor. And yeah, the flashcard thing just felt like the 2 steps back from the 2 steps forward. It's like, okay, we gotta remember that Clara's supposed to be the one wearing the pants in this relationship. So
I guess if we also have to remember that on that last episode when he was flattering Clara and talking to her, remember he was talking about how he invited all of him there and he had a bow tie on the day before. I think maybe he was still in his 11th Doctor phase because the way he was acting towards her with the flattery and stuff like that,
yeah,
that was more 11.
Playing Pretty Woman.
Can we talk about the Faraday cage for a second? That was the cage where they were all hiding, the crew.
Because lead.
Well, they said the Faraday cage, blocks radio waves and whatever the ghosts are, that's the Doctor says, so they can't get in. And then they find out a little bit later that it was also lined with lead because the equipment down there runs on nuclear fission and they needed somewhere to go if there was ever a leak. So is it the blocking the radio waves or is it the lead lining that's trapping these ghosts? Are they Superman or what?
Well, the fact that it blocks radio waves did kind of give the game away as far as the purpose behind the ghosts. They're supposed to be parts of a transmitter. So the radio wave part could be just as simple as that. They've been turned into living, quote-unquote, radio waves.
But if that's the case, wouldn't they have just disappeared when they walked in the Faraday cage?
Well, they went through the door where there wasn't any lining, and then on the inside it's like being on the outside, but you're surrounded by it instead, so that's how they would be trapped.
But if it blocks radio waves
that's true
from the source, then they should have just disappeared.
So
well, that's all I'm saying. If we're going by that theory.
No, that makes sense. So when they closed the door, they should have disappeared. I don't know, can you trap radio waves? I don't think so. I think you have to have that
probably
transmission. I think you have to have that constant transmission in order to keep them going.
We're really analyzing this.
I know. We're going too far into this. Anyway. And also, the whole thing about how they only come out at night. Was that explained? I know they said that at night the certain systems go down.
Something with the system that gets shut off.
It's mentioned by the deaf girl who says that that's shut off and that's why the ghosts can roam freely. Now, I got a question for you, Ed.
Yes.
For the longest time, the Doctor doesn't believe in ghosts. And now, all of a sudden, this episode, he believes in them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that whole thing where all of a sudden he believes in ghosts, that scene I don't get. Where all of a sudden he just says, yep, they're ghosts. It just, I don't know.
And then he gets really excited, too. He's just like, when I ask them all these questions, like, what does death feel like? And all this stuff. He gets pretty dark right there. And that's when he gets insensitive.
Yeah, and then that's
Go back to that lining of the soul, which was mentioned in the Eighth Doctor's movie, and that's one of the controversies that come up that mentions that people have a soul all of a sudden in the scientific world. This is mentioned. And the discovery of ghosts all of a sudden, and the Doctor writes it off. Well, socks weren't something until they were invented. iPhones, all that. None of these things were invented. But now all of a sudden, I do believe in ghosts. And this is a soul of something. I'm just like, we tread on that ice again?
Yeah, I didn't understand why that scene had to be there, like why he had to all of a sudden believe in ghosts, and then that segued into, okay, break out the flashcards, come on, bad doctor, apologize. That I didn't get. I didn't understand how it fit into the greater scheme of things.
And that's when the cloister bell starts, right?
Yeah, the TARDIS.
And they go in there.
Yeah, the TARDIS really starts freaking out.
Yeah, and the Doctor says the ghosts are unnatural. and the TARDIS wants to get away from him. That's the same thing he said about Jack Harkness. He was unnatural.
Well, didn't the TARDIS have a problem with him?
I tried to shake him off.
Tried to shake him off, yeah. And that's when Clara gets into her whole thing, you know, where she just is like, wants to go right back out where the action is. And that's when the Doctor, you know, is just like, basically, okay, there's something wrong with you because you're not even looking at the danger anymore. You're just too into having the adventure. And, you know, doesn't want her to go native, and that there's only room for one of him because she's starting to act like she's the Doctor, like she has no fear of going out there and doing anything.
Which is kind of scaring me because this was, and from what I've discussed with other people, this is the attitude that people don't like about Claire. They despise about Claire because it's this attitude that seemed to have pushed Danny away.
I agree. She was so annoying at that part. Yeah. And she was annoying in the beginning where she's like, we're on a roll. Let's go have an adventure. I know you want to save a planet. You know, I was just like, geez, just shut up.
That's another thing that just came off a little wrong.
Unnatural.
It came off it came off unnatural. It came off like I'm sitting there and I want to be in the writer's room going, okay, wait, what are you trying to do here? Because you're losing me. That said, though, yeah, the fact that Clara, for the fact that she called the Doctor to the carpet for being insensitive, it's kind of like, look, yeah, this is exciting, but take a chill. Hold on. Take a breath because stuff's happening here and we need to take this seriously. Yeah, she's a little too gung-ho. I kind of have to wonder, was she affected by what happened in Which is Familiar?
Which I was about to say, could that be the thing? Because I'm still thinking Moffat dropped something when Missy walks away and mentions the word hybrid as she's walking away from the discovery that Clara was the Dalek after all. And the Doctor finds out and tells her to run. That Missy had to drive that one punch in the gut to the Doctor when he keeps telling her to run off. Basically, the Doctor telling you need to go. You need to leave. You can't be here anymore. I might do something really bad. Yeah. Because I get the feeling when the Doctor saw her linked up to everything, it looked like he knew it was the end. I still think this hybrid thing is the new story arch, but now instead of Moffat relying on it like Missy, like the silence and everything, I think for once he's hiding the arch. He's now putting it as the bad wolf into the corner, and he's not going to reveal it until it comes later. But he's still dropping the hints, but he's not making it the predominant thing as he did in the past. And I think that's what Patty had mentioned in the previous episode, that this is the mark that she's done. This is it. We're starting her downfall.
And so instead of dropping the word hybrid like a party flavor from a piñata, it's coming off in more subtle ways, like the fact that she was all gung-ho to keep going, and the Doctor has to be like, okay, chill, relax.
Pretty much so. That might be it, because I couldn't understand what that conversation was about.
Yeah, no.
It just seemed like she was changing fold in character. I don't know. This might be the subtle changes that we're finally getting that Moffat should have done with the silence and everybody else. You know, just the subtle drops every now and then and seeing that. But could this be just something that Moffat dropped so that we had a bone to play with while he's got something else going on? We know she's leaving, but how is she leaving?
Yeah, because we still don't have anything, I think, pointing in that direction. We think it'll happen in episode 10, but we don't have anything concrete.
What do you think, Trish? Do you think this hybrid thing is coming to its fruition, or do you think this is just something to decide?
No, I think you're right. I think there's something there with it, because it doesn't make any sense to bring up something. I mean, well, of course it's Moffat, but I mean, you know, I think you're right. I think it's something that's going to come to light in the next 8 episodes or something. You know, I mean, I think you're right.
And speaking of ghosts and Halloween, what does everybody think about that ending? Did anybody think that was what she was seeing out the window? I thought it was something else.
As far as the ending is concerned, yeah, I'm kind of like, first of all, there's a little bit of time travel involved, so we'll see how that plays out.
Let's just say the Doctor said he's going to go back to the day of the flood to see if he can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's what he has to do, because he doesn't know when the thing crashed.
Right.
So it's not like he can go back to when the thing crashed.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any predictions or ideas of what's going to happen in the next episode?
Well, I predict that what's the pilot or whoever that's in the suspended animation thing, I think it's going to be that Fisher King.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The Fisher King's in there. Ending to this episode, Clara sees that ghost, the Doctor's ghost, in the water, complete with the no eyes, indicating the Doctor apparently loses. But for me, I first thought that it was going to be like an army of eyeless ghosts. But I gotta say, though, seeing Ghost Doctor makes for a much better cliffhanger. I suspect it's one of these things that, given that we now have time travel in the mix, it's probably not as cut and dry as we think. There's probably something else in there, but I'm going to be curious. And I think everybody can put money down that it's the Fisher King in that capsule. I think you can put money down and you're going to get some back, unless Moffat pulls a major curveball and says, nope, haha, you thought it was the Fisher King? Fooled you, it's actually this. But we'll see.
Okay, I'm going to go on a very weird prediction here.
Hit me.
I'm just going to, because the doctor can't die, because he's still got to run through the episode. He dies, and we know he dies. I'm beginning to think that stasis tomb preserves you, but puts you in a state of death. I'm even going to go as far as to say Abraham Leprechaun is in there, because he seems to be the only anomaly outside of what's going on. And if he is the coward that he is, he's going to hide in a crashing ship into something that I'm guessing, because that's the only way I can explain why the doctor becomes that ghost thing. And I think the doctor's going to go inside that capsule to do the same, because that was before the flood.
So
And you can become a ghost in that thing, but not physically die, because it's a stasis capsule. So it puts you in a state of death because you are in stasis, but you're not technically dead. And that's when they rescue the capsule. It's back in the ship. The doctor is in that capsule in the ship. That's why it's never opened up in the first place.
I'm
totally guessing that.
Too. I was thinking that too, but then I was thinking, is that too complicated for Moffat? But then it's like, no, yeah. Well, I think that you're right. I think the Fisher King's in it in the past. Like when they go to the past, they're gonna find it and open it, and then that's what's going to cause the flood. Again, the doctor causing what has happened in the past, like Pompeii.
Okay, so the Fisher King got out, and the doctor got in.
And the doctor got in.
And now he's in the future. He's probably locked in there.
Yeah.
And all
like
these years,
Pandorica,
So yeah, we've got a Pandorica / Data's head.
Yeah. And then he can think about, well, the TARDIS is that stuck back there. Well, he can call the TARDIS to him.
I'm going to toss this in there. If that's the case, I would not be surprised that we have a scene with maybe the Death Girl looking at the doctor, and then the message is changed. Instead of being the 4 words, it's something like "open it" or something like that. The message is different.
We'll find out next week.
Find out in the next episode.
Just got 7 days. Well, 7 days from when we record this. Less than that from when you hear it. Just got a little bit of time to figure it out.
All right, guys. Well, that was a great review. And speaking of ghosts, coming up next is from AMC's The Walking Dead, Chris Harrelson, who is an actual walker. I think they consider them premier walkers in the episode. And he's going to talk to us about the show, him being on the show, and his career. So stay tuned for that after the commercial. We'll be right back with Mark Who 42.
Attention all Whovians! While you're waiting for the new episode of Doctor Who, start your own adventures with a book from Mark Who 42 Books. They carry unique and rare books at affordable prices. Visit Amazon.com/shops/MarkWho42. That's Amazon.com/shops/MarkWho42. Mark Who 42 Books. Set your imagination free into the Whoniverse.
Kid? Yes? Shut up.
Beyond the Night is the GCRN's latest review podcast. We are covering everything in the Knight Rider television universe, from the classic 80s TV series to the 1991 reunion film, Team Knight Rider, and the 2008 relaunch series as well. So join TFG and Mike and Dion the Music Man as they go in-depth and Beyond the Night, only on Geekcast Radio Network. You can find Beyond the Night in iTunes and on www.geekcastradio.com.
Kid?
Yes, Michael.
Just keep driving.
By the power of Grayskull, I command the drawbridge. Open!
The Powers of Grayskull series will cover every episode of all 4 Masters of the Universe cartoons. Join Optimus Solo and myself, TFG and Mike, as we tell tales of Eternia, discover the myths of Etheria, become masters in space, and finally Masters of Grayskull. We'll have a commentary on the Secret of the Sword film and a few other special episodes. You can find this 125-episode-long podcast in iTunes and on the web at geekcastradio.com. By the power and honor of Grayskull, we all have the power.
Hurry, Skeletor, hurry! I am hurrying,
Hi, this is Dominic Glynn. I'm a composer for TV and film. I was the composer on Doctor Who in the 1980s, and you are listening to Mark Who 42.
Welcome back to Mark Who 42 here on Krypton Radio. I'm your host, Mark Baumgarten. With me, of course, is Christian-basel and Patty-hawkins.
Hello.
And we've got a very special guest because it is the time of year that scary things happen. You know, we're in the month of October, and
we are? I mean, yeah, we are.
We are.
Talking about things that go on at your house. I don't know.
That bump in the night, or rather eat your brains. It's going to be the season premiere of The Walking Dead, and we thought, what better Halloween present for you, our listener, than to have Chris Harrelson on our show, who is one of the walkers on The Walking Dead. Hello, Chris.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
We're glad you were able to join us. Dinner was nice the other night, wasn't it? That was good.
It was. That was a cool place. I'm glad we went there.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know about it.
Yeah, Space Coast Comic-Con.
You were so envious of my steak sandwich, Mark.
I was. You're saying, because I had a salad. What the heck was that? What was I thinking?
What were you thinking? Caesar salad without the chicken or the Caesar, I think.
Meanwhile, the carnivorous flesh eater had shrimp.
Yeah, he had shrimp. I didn't understand that. You should have had the steak sandwich.
I have to get fried shrimp on every trip to Florida. That has to happen. Everything else is just kind of secondary.
So, Chris, can you tell us a little about yourself and your career?
Yeah. So, obviously, I don't guess. I'm definitely most well known for my work on The Walking Dead. I can't really talk, really at all about working on the show other than to give some generic, general information.
Okay.
But I started on the show last year with season 5, and I portrayed 13 different walkers in 9 different episodes. And I'm still working on season 6, which is premiering very, very shortly, Sunday, October 11th, right around the corner.
Oh, so it's this week, October 11th.
Yep, coming right at you, man.
Wow, that's going to be great. I can't wait to watch. Well, actually, I can't say that because I have to apologize. I have not watched The Walking Dead. I have not seen the show that everyone is telling me is such a great show. Am I missing the most important thing in life?
I mean, let me put it this way, dude. I didn't watch the show until I got asked to audition for it. So, I figured I had to do my research, of course. But I mean, at the end of the first episode, I got hooked. And I mean, I plowed through all 4 seasons very, very quickly. Coming from someone who wasn't a fan and before he started working on the show and then started watching it, it's very well made. And I'm a fan now.
So we need to get you cast on Doctor Who then.
Okay. Yes, because that's when I will start watching it. Yes. All you have to do.
Doctor Who, so you have to watch it all.
Just get me an audition, and then I'll start.
Mark's got the hookup,
Yeah, I've got
nice.
Stephen Moffat is listening to our show right now, so he'll talk to you. He'll call
you
up
in the work somewhere.
He'll call
that's got to be in the work somewhere.
But so you suggest that I should binge watch The Walking Dead?
Yeah, I mean, it's all up on Netflix, man. So you can start at the very beginning and just plow through and, go ahead and DVR the first couple episodes of this season until you, get caught up and, then ride it out.
Now, I'm not a stranger to The Walking Dead because it was originally a comic book by Robert Kirkman, and I did read some of that, the early issues of that. Can you tell us a little about the storyline so far? I know you can't talk about Series 6, and I usually don't like spoilers, but give us a little taste of what's been going on.
So, in the very first episode, the main character, Sheriff Rick Grimes, is shot and goes into a coma. He wakes up an undisclosed amount of time later, but presumed to be a couple months later, and the hospital he's in is deserted, and basically he wakes up in the middle of a zombie apocalypse that has happened around him. So you're kind of thrown into the world with him. You don't know what's happened, where it's come from or anything. So the very beginning of the show is the first couple of months of a zombie apocalypse. And now I think we're about a year and a half or 2 years into it. And it's become a show about survival, about what you have to do in order to just to live on a daily basis. It's about what happens to people, who you become when the world around you changes, when civilization breaks down. It's about the relationships between people, how you relate to the people that are around you, how you help them, how you hurt them, how you get what you need. The walkers on the show are an ever-present threat. We are the danger that is always right around the corner, but at its heart, it's a show about people and about the relationships between people and who you become when the chips are down.
Now, I understand on this show, I mean, you're zombies, but you're not. You're walkers. It's the same thing, right, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, basically, on the show, it's called The Walking Dead, and that's really a play on, in the comics, there was a big scene where Rick says, like, all right, the zombies are not – basically he's saying the title of the comic applies to the people. They are the Walking Dead. They have a death sentence. Like, the world is dead around them. Their life is over.
Right.
They're just like the Walking Dead. Why are they going on? But, yeah, they don't use the word, like, zombies in the show and in the comics, but they use all kinds of other words like geeks, freaks, roamers, biters. So you come across, like, different groups of people on the show, like, right. And different cliques, and they have their own terminology because it's not like they're all sitting on a chat room together like, oh man, do you see all these walkers? Man, that was crazy today. Everybody's cut off from each other. So
I know Kirkman has said that in this universe there is no zombie fiction as we know it.
Oh.
In the Walking Dead universe, George Romero didn't exist. There was no Night of the Living Dead, the movie, so they had to learn the rules and develop them as they go along, which is why they don't call them zombies.
So the ideology of zombie is not even present, so they don't even have a word for it yet.
Well, like I said, they call walkers. And curiously enough, Romero didn't even call them zombies in Night of the Living Dead. They were called ghouls.
That is true. You're right. You are absolutely right on that.
No, what happened was when Dawn of the Dead was brought over to Europe, they just renamed it Zombie, and that kind of was how the zombie genre got its settled to name. It was just, okay, it's zombie movie, zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it.
Gotcha. I know this is going to sound stupid, but wasn't there something about Marvel or Stanley or something like that there was the word zombie and they used it and nobody else could use it or something?
The comics code after the 50s when it was developed, you cannot use the word zombie. You cannot use werewolves or vampires or anything like that. When it was revived in the early mid-70s, that's why you saw a slew of those Marvel horror comics.
Oh, yeah, Blade,
Dracula,
Werewolf Dracula, yeah.
Gotcha.
The Morbius the Living Vampire, because that genie was suddenly allowed to come out of the bottle, and that's why you had this huge influx in the 70s during Marvel. So,
and zombies are big because of Marvel zombies. But anyway, let's go back to Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hey,
so
what's up?
Still there with us?
Still chilling.
That's great, as long as you're chilling. So how have you, as a walker, been killed so far?
Pretty much the basic ways that all walkers get killed: shot, stabbed, or sliced. And I mean, basically, to kill a walker on the show, you got to get its brain, Right. So yeah, I mean, those are
one of the. So there are a lot of headshots.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, every once in a while, like when you're watching the show, you'll see a cool gag where they crush a head or do something like that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, when you watch the show, most of the weapons that people have are guns, swords, and knives, and that's what, they have available to them.
If you cut off the head, does that work? Cut off the head?
So, all right, so there's a very famous scene where a famous character gets his head chopped off. And and it's like the mid-season finale. It's and then you come back a couple months later to the mid-season premiere of the next half season, and you see his head still laying on the ground with the eyes moving and the mouth moving and stuff, and someone has to stab him through the head to put him out. So
it's totally the brain.
Yep, you got to get the brain.
And to turn someone into a walker, does the walker has to what? In this mythology.
So on the show, the ways that people...
if you just die of anything, you become a walker. Everybody has the virus.
Death. Everyone has the virus. It's completely just death.
Right.
Yeah, if a walker bites you, you will turn into a walker, and it's sort of a sliding time scale, whatever the plot needs. But yeah, they've established that there was one episode where a guy just died of lung cancer or something, and then he emerged as a zombie and caused a mini outbreak in prison.
But remember to amend something you just said. You can get bit by a zombie, but then lose the limb and still live, because we've seen people have to get their legs chopped off and stuff to stop the virus basically from spreading to their body.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sliding scale.
Now, Chris, were you a fan of the zombie and the horror genre before you took the role?
No, I wasn't a fan of the zombie genre in particular, and honestly I probably hadn't even really seen too many zombie representations in media other than Night of the Living Dead. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of the 80s horror movies, so Nightmare on Elm Street was my favorite. I mean, I used to watch those movies all the time, and then things like Creepshow 1 and 2, Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, Clown House, so in the 80s as a kid, Child's Play, all that good stuff. I really loved the 80s horror genre. I think
I'm still laughing that you quoted Sleepaway Camp, because That ending is just what?
That's pretty twisted, man. But it doesn't stop there. Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3.
2 and 3, yeah, I know. Sleepaway Camp 3, the guy gets a firecracker up the nose.
Dude, those are some awesome movies. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I grew up. But I think in like the 90s when things started going away from horror, I think, and a little more like sci-fi-ish and more like CGI and less of the practical effects, I think I kind of like steered sort of away from it. So I don't know. I'm more into like, I guess, the suspense type and thriller type horror movies instead of like the shock and gore type things.
Chris, how did the audition process go for you on The Walking Dead? What did you have to do?
I was, different than every other audition I've had before. There are some videos online of, they call it like Zombie School or Walker University, where it shows kind of the whole process. But it's basically just like a group audition where there's, several of you in a room, and they give you a couple of different scenarios to act out, and then you do what they tell you to do, and then they give you a kind of specific direction, like, hey, you're, slow your walk down, or hey, drop a shoulder or something a little bit. So it's just kind of like really like a half hour, kind of like a group audition where they can size you up and see how you look, and then see if they think you can take direction, because if they like your look, and then they think that you can do what they tell you to do, then, they'll bring you on set. And then like once you get on set, that's, it's just kind of like every other job where your work, I guess, kind of speaks for itself. The better you do, the more often they're going to want to use you.
Right. Now, because you've played so many different walkers, the makeup job must be different each time. How long does the makeup process take?
Usually like an hour and a half, but it can be longer if it's something that's like super intense. If there's like their normal makeup jobs that you'll see like close-ups and stuff on the show are about an hour and a half, but when there's something that involves like sagging skin or like work that's done on body parts instead of just like your face, that can take longer, like 3 to 4 hours. So it's it just depends on what they need for the scene.
And when they're doing the makeup on you, do you listen to music? Do you what do you do for the hour and a half to 4 hours?
They usually have makeup playing, music playing in the makeup trailer. But I've done it so much now that I'm like friends with most of the makeup people. So usually we just talk about stuff, talk about family, the kids, last trip that you went on, what you saw on TV the night before. Now we're all kind of like coworkers. Mm-hmm. So, you're just kind of hanging out while you're working and just shooting the crap, basically.
Now, you've died so many deaths on this show. what is the most strangest out of all the deaths that you've had to make? Or a death that somebody came up with and said, hey, Chris, we're going to do this to you. And you're like, what?
It wasn't a death scene, but the napalm walker scene where we were all like melted into the ground, that was definitely
I got
most like intense and memorable.
Cool.
I didn't show you pictures of that, Mark?
No, I didn't.
You definitely got to see that.
You'll have to send me a copy.
Oh, for sure.
Whenever I see you at the shows, Chris, I see people walk by your table and they're like, okay, one of the zombie dudes Walking Dead. And I love when they geek out when they see your napalm picture. They're like, wait, you were that one?
Yeah, that was like every year they have a couple of like big like zombie scenes, I guess, that are like memorable. They stand out. They're different types of zombies, or it's like weird location or something like that. But last year there were like a couple of scenes like that, and the napalm was definitely, I think, the most memorable. That's the one that people seem to react to the most when they like see it or find out that you were in it or whatever. People like that a lot.
Who's your favorite actor on the show? It's not your favorite, but just name some of the actors that you like on the show.
I don't like her, but I like him.
Exactly. No.
Let's pit them up against each other.
No, because David Morrissey was on the show. That was not when you were on it, right?
Right.
He's already gone. But he was on a Doctor Who story, The Next Doctor. They were trying to trick us into thinking he'd be the next Doctor Who, and he wasn't. But there are a lot of other actors on the show that are very popular.
Yeah, to be honest with you, all the regular actors are like super cool, and I've really enjoyed working with them. But in the trailer for season 6, they showed a clip with Ethan Embry in it. Uh-huh. And I grew up watching his movies like Empire Records.
Right.
He was in Dutch, which was awesome.
Oh, I remember Dutch.
Can't Hardly Wait, which, was like a high school graduation movie that came out like the summer that I graduated high school. So I kind of like grew up, watching his films as like a teenager. And when I worked with him on set, that was just kind of like mind blowing. Because I didn't know he was going to be there. I was like, dude, what is he doing here? This is awesome. Because I'd expected everybody else from the cast to be there. So he was the one person, I guess, that I've worked with on the show that I guess kind of like meant the most to me as far as like personally or whatever. But professionally, they all operate at such a high level, like in their craft, that it's amazing just to be around them and to watch them and kind of like absorb what they do on set and try to learn from them.
Chris, your most outrageous behind the scenes. Something that's happened about that, of course.
I don't think there's any, like, a lot of, like, really crazy stuff to tell from the show. It's all kind of, like, pretty subdued. I mean, when we're not on set, we're all just usually kind of, like, sitting down and reading books or, like, a group will, like, walk off to, like, smoke cigarettes or whatever. Everyone there is, like, well, I wouldn't say everyone. Most people there are really like professional about it and like thankful to be there and want to keep being used again, So you don't see a whole lot of like hijinks like behind the scenes. Maybe with like the main cast, I'm sure they do a lot of that stuff, but it's probably done like where we're not privy to it for the most part. But I haven't really seen much like goofing off or anything like that. It's usually just, everybody sitting around talking about football games or, whatever. Just, like every other job, I guess.
Was there ever anything from one of the featured walkers that you were like, oh, dude, man, I wish they had asked me to do that? Or was there something that they didn't ask you for and they were like, oh, man, thank God I didn't have to do that?
Yes, and sometimes even in the exact same instance. So, like, you'll see someone performing a scene that is going to look cool on TV and it's memorable and you're like, oh, man, that would have been really rad. But then you see like what they have to go through like physically and stuff to like actually do the scene. And you're like, but at the same time, I'm super glad they didn't ask me to do that. So, that happens all the time. It's fun because a couple of friends that I've known for a long time are now working on the show. So it's really neat to see them getting really cool scenes and to be like proud of that. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of cool because it's the complete opposite of being like, oh man, I wish I had been, they'd asked me to do that. It's like, oh man, that's totally cool that they asked him to do that. I'm really stoked for him. So yes and yes to both of your questions. But then at the same time, you're also like happy for your friends that are on the set as well, because, they're getting good scenes and screen time and stuff, which is pretty cool.
Well, you're listening to Mark Who 42. We've got our special guest, Chris-Harrelson, who is a walker on seasons 5 and 6 of The Walking Dead. Now, Chris, we were talking when we had dinner the other night. Halloween weekend, you've got a convention you're going to. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Halloween weekend, which is kind of crazy because that's the weekend of Walker Stalker in Atlanta, which is like right down the street from my house. But that weekend, I'll be at a 3-day convention in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The convention is Central Canada Comic Con, otherwise known as C4, I believe. And it sounds like it's going to be a really good time, and I'm definitely going to have to buy a heavy winter jacket because I don't have that. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be, from what I hear, it's just like a 3-day long Halloween party, and I'm really stoked for that. It's going to be exciting.
I've heard good things about that show, so I think you'll do really well.
Speaking of conventions, because I found you at the conventions. I think it was Space Coast Nerd Fest. I think that's the first time I met you. And I was actually following around Michael Kosk at the time. When did you start doing the conventions, and how are fans reactive to you when they see you out there?
Well, my first convention, that's so weird. Right when you said that, I was actually like staring directly at the little booklet from that convention. It was the SC Comic Con in Greenville, South Carolina. That was last March. So that was my first convention experience, still one of the best that I've had, and fans have been awesome, man. It's still it's new and strange to me and very humbling at the same time, but it's really cool to to get out there and meet people in so many different places who have such like a strong attachment to the show, because I live in Atlanta where the show is filmed. I was born here, lived here my whole life, and the show started off in Atlanta. So everyone around here, it's a big deal where I live. Everyone is familiar with it. They know people who have worked on the show. It's a phenomenon that I haven't really experienced in my lifetime, like living here. So I knew what it was like to people that lived here, I honestly didn't know like how widespread the phenomenon was and what a huge deal it was to other people. But just traveling, I mean, different places like, where I've seen you guys in Florida, Texas, Toronto, Philly, and the people just love it, and it's really neat to be able to talk to them, to hear from them like what they think about the show. And most of them know so much more about it than I do. Like, I learn things from people at conventions all the time that I never even thought about. They're like, remember when this happened in this episode? And I'm like, you know what? Now that you mention it, that is what went down. I never even thought about that. So it's been a really cool experience for me.
Well, it helps a lot that you are very giving and very cool back to them. I mean, Christian, Mark, and I, we're sort of tweeners. We kind of exist in 1 foot on one side of the table, on your side, 1 foot on the fan side. And we've seen all sorts of convention guests, and this is no BS. And I tell you, man, I've seen you work your table. I've seen you talk to your fans, and everything, your energy comes from a legitimately genuine place.
Yeah.
And that means so much that they walk away. I mean, that's a credit to you, because I've seen others, not walkers, but I've seen other people in comparable positions from other shows in the backgrounds that just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I was on that episode of Star Trek. I got turned into a piece of styrofoam. $30 for a picture, 40 for an autograph. Next,
Well, thanks, man. I mean, I'm a fan too. Like, I'm a pretty big nerd myself. So, I mean, I like meeting other people at conventions. Like, I'm a big comic book and TV and movie nerd myself. So, I mean, while I'm there and while I'm talking to people and while they're fans, like, talking to me about the work that I do, I'm looking at the dude sitting next to me. I'm like, can you believe, like, this guy's here? Like, this is totally crazy that I get to be here with this dude. So, yeah, I got 1 foot on either side of the table, I guess.
He's not talking about us, but that's okay.
I'm definitely talking about you guys.
Oh, totally.
What other fandom do you have out there?
Oh, man, I mean,
what's your big favorite? If there was a table out there, you definitely had to go and visit that table.
Well, I mean, out of all the classifications of random geekdom, I guess Star Wars would be my number one. I mean, I don't guess, that's definitely number one.
So you looking forward to the new movie?
Yeah, man. I mean, my son's name is Luke.
The prequel?
Because of the prequels. I mean, because of, in spite of, whatever you want to say. Yeah, man. I grew up with the original trilogy. I was born in 81, so the Return of the Jedi came out. Yeah. Well, don't feel it, but Return of the Jedi came out, when I was 2 years old. So, I mean, when I was growing up, every kid that I knew, all my friends, we all had that series on VHS. That's what we did. We watched Star Wars all the time. So while the prequel trilogy, when it came out, I was excited about it. It was different because, I mean, I wanted to see the story of how Anakin became Darth Vader, but more than anything, I've always wanted to see what happens to Luke, Han, and Leia, after this. Okay, it tells us that Luke is the one that restored balance to the galaxy. Okay, well, we saw him get rid of Vader or get rid of the Emperor, and Vader passed away or whatever. So now Luke has restored balance to the galaxy. What does that look like? And what does it look like when something threatens that balance?
Wait a second. Has he brought balance? Because he's gotten rid of the evil, so now there's just good in the Force. He hasn't balanced it.
Well, remember, I thought it was Anakin that did it, and Anakin killed off all the Jedi, and then he killed off the last of the Sith, and then he himself died. The Force was theoretically in balance. I think Luke and Leia and all the Force sensitives in the next trilogy are going to start the cycle all over again and screw it all up.
They have to. They have to, because you can't just have all good if it's balanced.
Well, and remember, this next movie, doesn't take place immediately after Return of the Jedi. Now we are 30 years later, so perhaps we're now going to see the evil uprising to create that balance that has been thrown out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Also, too, you have to figure, the idea of the balance of the Force. What is that exactly? I always interpret it as just people using the Force. The Sith and the Jedi, I think, are just projected philosophical outlooks on it. I never looked at it as good versus evil or even order versus chaos. To me, it was just, these guys think the Force should be used like this, and these guys think the Force should be used like this.
I mean, I feel pretty safe saying the Sith are bad guys, right? I mean, come on. They're pretty bad, dude. They're pretty bad. I mean, when Anakin was becoming a Sith, he slaughtered a whole temple full of younglings. I mean,
But you know what? If you think about it, the Emperor wanted to bring structure to the galaxy. Palpatine knew that the senators, they were infighting and all that stuff, and they were, each planet had problems with other planets. When he took over, as emperor, he actually brought balance to the galaxy. He brought social order. He brought political order.
Well, I mean,
in a way, that's not evil. It is, but...
Well, it's hard to say because we never really got a full view of just how bad the universe was under the Empire. We always saw fringes of it, but we never really got a good taste of what life exactly was like under the Empire.
Right, we don't know. We know that there was some persecution, but we also know that the rebels, the good guys, were rebels. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe the ISB or whatever, the head stormtroopers were just like policemen in here, and they were stopping crime. We don't know.
Well, it depends too. Remember too, Hitler made the trains run on time as well. So it's all about perspective.
One man's order is another man's like slavery,
Yeah. And supposedly the emperor didn't like aliens, so humans were treated better in the Empire than the other races. It's a whole lot of mishigash.
Well, it's kind of like a different political view today. I mean, you could find the positives and negatives on all things. It's just which one do you think is the better one? There's not really a right or wrong. It's just how your perspective is, and what do you believe in, and how far people are willing to go to make that view happen.
There's different places on a certain line of perspective, but then there's also extremes on either side,
Exactly.
So, I mean, Sith is probably pretty extreme. And, I mean, it's interesting that you said that, Patty, because, like, as a kid, you see Vader as the bad guy, but I never saw Luke as, like, the good guy. He was just the reluctant hero. It was kind of almost thrust upon him, It was like, hey, guess what, kid? This is you. Here's what you're supposed to do now. And it was almost like a responsibility that he took on himself. He wasn't like the sheriff who rode into town trying to take out the bad guys,
Obi-Wan and Yoda basically treated Luke as their weapon, and they never wanted him to find out that Vader was his dad, because then they were like, oh, this is going to gum up the works for if he's going to get rid of Vader.
Yeah, and they straight up lied to him, too. I mean, and this could be the prequels that make it a lie, but like when Obi-Wan gives Luke his lightsaber and he's like, your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough. Like, when did that happen? Like when he was throwing Anakin in a lake of fire, like, here, give this to my son, don't let it die.
The thing about Luke that a lot of people don't, it still amazes me, a lot of people don't quite like look upon, is like, okay, Luke embraced both sides of the Force. He really does. At least he does a lot of things that are un-Jedi-like. He did trust his feelings and his emotions, where the Jedi seem very, very aesthetic, very like, no, we don't believe in love or compassion. It's just all about, it's like order and our sense of discipline. So Luke embraced both, and he appealed to Anakin in both, and that's why I think Luke would have been interesting in the Jedi, because he truly was. He was not a full Jedi. He was not a Sith. He had one foot in both worlds, and he found that balance. Now, if JJ and his group carry that over, that'll be interesting.
Well, yeah, Luke was, while in the prequels, and I guess probably a lot further back than that, Jedis were trained from a very young age. The younglings, they were brought up in that life. Luke was just, I mean, and maybe this is why I like latched onto it when I was a kid and why I liked it so much. He was just like a rebellious teenager, single child living out in the desert in the middle of nowhere, having fun, bullseye and womp rats, So it's not like he was brought up with that mentality. He was just like the rest of us. He was just a dude, who had to run into town to pick up some power converters when they needed them. His mom sending him to the grocery store, just like everybody else. So it was almost like he had big dreams, but he never knew exactly what they were, or he just knew that he wasn't supposed to be where he was. And then when his destiny kind of came to him, he grabbed it.
It still wasn't his dreams, though. That's the funny thing. Just like you said, he's always been the reluctant hero. He said this responsibility thrust upon him, and he's done his job. But, I'd be curious. If you ever asked an adult Luke Skywalker now, he probably said, you know what, I was happier on Tatooine bullseyeing womp rats.
Well, I think there's just this, and a lot of it might just be implied, but, there's the scenes of him, like, staring out at the stars, and the suns and all that, and you just get the feeling that, like, he felt like he was supposed to go somewhere else and do something else. Maybe didn't know exactly what that was, but, I always just got the feeling that he knew that farm with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru isn't where he needed to be when he was 50 years old,
Yeah. And like a lot of classic stories, boys want to go off and have an adventure, and then when they get halfway through it, it's never quite as awesome as they think it is. People they care about die, planets get blown up, and it's like, oh wait, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, it got pretty real for him.
Yeah, it did.
It just felt a little bit weird in the prequels that the same technology that could save a man who lost his arms and legs in third-degree burns cannot save a woman who has lost the will to live.
Yeah, there's some
discrepancy. Just couldn't get through that.
Well, you know what? I have a theory about Padme. I never believed she was really in love with Anakin. I think Anakin was so juiced up with the Force, and he wanted her to love him so much, and just being... Because remember, too, in part 2, she hadn't seen him in years, and she was like, oh, Annie, still the same little kid. By the end of the movie, she's madly in love with him for no reason whatsoever. I think he just wanted her so much. It was like, if you stand close enough to a flame but not actually put your hand in it, you're still going to get burned if you're in there for a while. And I think she was completely brainwashed. So by the end of the third movie, when she thought he was dead, yeah, she died of a broken heart because she was so mind-warped.
To a different degree on that, I think she loved what Anakin became and all that power, the Jedi-ness and everything, and that a Jedi could not be turned to fall in love, and here she's doing that. I think there was something to that as well. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Chris, if people want to learn more about you, do you have a web presence or anything that they can, or can they get in touch with you, like on Facebook or something?
Definitely. Yeah, my Facebook page, you can either search for Zombie Chris Harrelson, which is Harrelson. It's spelled just like Woody Harrelson. So you can search for Zombie Chris Harrelson, or the actual address of the page is facebook.com/Chris Harrelson ATL, because, you know, that's where I live.
And do you have a website?
I do not. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, although I don't do a ton on there. I should probably ramp that up with the new season coming up. But on Twitter, I'm at Chris N. Harrelson, in, the initial, the letter. Then on Instagram, I think I'm at Harrelson81, like no spaces or anything like that.
No, I'm guessing there's absolutely nothing you can tell us about season 6.
No, and I've probably already said more than I should have about my work on the show, so I definitely can't say anything about stuff that hasn't aired yet.
How's AMC treating you?
How are they treating me?
How are they treating you at AMC?
They treat everyone on the production really well, man. I mean, it's let me say this. I've worked on over 20 TV shows and films, and the Walking Dead set is my favorite.
Do you have some other highlights from your non-Walking Dead stuff you want to share with us?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd necessarily call them highlights, but some appearances. I was in Hunger Games 3. I just very, very briefly, for like literally 2 seconds, I was one of President Snow's guards, his Avoxes, when he was getting his hair trimmed in that scene. And I'm also in Hunger Games 4, Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, which comes out very shortly.
That is soon.
And I don't know exactly how much screen time I have in that because I haven't seen it yet. So we'll see. It could be none. It could be a couple of minutes. It could be somewhere in between. So I'm not really sure. Then I was in a brief scene in Taken 3, Selma as well. I was a journalist in Selma covering Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy. I did a couple scenes in The Vampire Diaries, the originals, being Mary Jane, Rectify. That was really cool. Actually, Rectify, I met a lot of friends on that set that I'm still friends with today. That's probably the one specific scene that I worked on where I made the most people that I'm still in contact with, and that was actually the first time that somebody told me that they thought I'd be on The Walking Dead. Like, I met a dude who was another walker on the show, and he was talking about working on the show, and he was like, oh yeah, dude, you're going to be on there. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I haven't submitted for that or anything. He's like, no. He was like, you have the right body type. Like, they've cast you in other things, like the same casting company. So he was like, they're going to contact you, I promise. And I was like, oh, that would be cool, I guess. And they did. What else have I done? Devious Maids, Survivor's Remorse, Finding Carter on MTV, and 3 different Tyler Perry shows.
Wow.
Nice.
And Family Feud.
Family Feud. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you win?
No, I was paid to be an audience member. I wasn't actually on the show.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Family Feud pays audience members?
Certain ones, yeah.
Wow.
They need to balance out certain demographics, so they look for specific people to kind of put into the audience. Yeah.
I gotta try to get that gig.
You saw my buddy Ruben.
That's pretty sweet.
Warm-up act.
Oh, you know Ruben? Ruben is the man.
Ruben and I, we had a sketch comedy group 12 years ago. We You know how we met? We were playing zombies for Halloween.
Nice.
We were playing zombies for Halloween Horror Nights back in like the late 90s at Universal.
Dude, Ruben was so funny, man. And like, yeah, so for the first half of the day, I was sitting like in the front row. And then the second half of the day after lunch, I was in like the back part of the studio. And Ruben would like do his bit and then he would like run back there. And that's like, he was sitting like right next to me like during the show. And it was so funny to watch him laugh like at Steve Harvey's like jokes and deliveries. Like Ruben was cracking up and sitting right next to me, and he was making me laugh like super hard just watching him laugh. But yeah, man, that guy was a lot of fun. I would like to go see him just do his own thing, not there.
That's like stage 8 of his plan to rule the world. But yeah, I actually performed his wedding ceremony.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, that's how deep we go. So
small
cool.
world, man.
Indeed. But I wouldn't want to paint it.
That's true.
Well, Chris Harrelson, I want to thank you so much for coming here on Mark Who 42. You not being a real Doctor Who fan, but that's okay. We don't hold it against you.
I'll get there, man. I need some guidance. I need to know when and where to like start watching the show, and I'm going to do it.
We were going to, and we will. We'll get you into it. He's got The Walking Dead Series 6 premieres this Sunday, October 11th on AMC. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
I mean, I know you can't say anything, but are you in the first episode at least? Are we going to watch it this week?
Yeah, I'm in it. I mean,
cool.
You know, I can't say things about like what I actually do on set or like what is going to happen in the episode, but I can totally tell you like which ones I'll be in. Like I'm in the first episode twice. Like that's now I don't think they're like big featured like super scenes in the first episode or anything, but more of those are coming throughout the season. But yeah, man, I'm definitely in the first episode.
Excellent.
It is excellent.
Chris, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been really fun.
As always, brother.
Pleasure. That was an awesome interview with Chris Harrelson, and he's a great friend of the show as well. And I really, really can't wait to see until the premiere. And when this episode comes out this Wednesday or whenever you hear it, this coming Sunday will be premiere of AMC's The Walking Dead. Make sure you check on the AMC's website or your AMC channel to find the premiere this Sunday at the time that it's coming on, and catch Chris, literally walking around. As we continue, we are in October, so this is getting closer to Halloween, so that's why we had Chris in the beginning to bring in the little spookiness that we're coming up over here.
You know what? You realize with this episode, we've had ghosts, we've had zombies. What are we missing? We're missing vampires, we're missing some...
Vampire monkeys. There you go.
Okay, actually, no, but that was... do we count that?
That was in last week, and that was October, right?
Well, that was September. That was
still September? Okay.
Still September. So, I mean, should we count that? Because, I mean, in that case, that would mean vampires, ghosts, and zombies. We'd still be missing, I don't know, what, mummies? I think mummies,
Frankensteins, all that stuff.
Hey, the Fisher King could kind of fill in for that Creature of the Black Lagoon kind of slot. I don't know. What other Halloween monsters are we missing, Trish?
I don't know.
I think we've gotten the primary ones, right? Well, I suppose, maybe one of these Doctor Who episodes will have some jerk who will be like, "Hey, here's an apple." It's like, come on, man, this is a day for candy. Ugh.
Helping for the dentists.
I think the dentist, it's floss, isn't it?
I've had one of those dentists who actually, during Halloween, they would, instead of giving out candy, he gave out toothpaste and toothbrushes that he got.
I've done that before. So
actually, you know
what? And you know what though? And every kid that got it was so excited.
As long as they're excited. You know what? I knew there was a comic book writer who gives out comics instead of candy. He says, I'm going to rot the brain instead of the teeth.
Well, everybody, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Always catch us online, on Facebook, on Twitter, and blah, blah, blah. We've got it all the stuff. Mark will mention it at the end of the show where you can catch us. Download the episode. We're premiering Wednesday and Fridays on Krypton Radio. Check www.kryptonradio.com for times in your areas for when this episode will premiere. And don't forget to download it when the episode premieres on iTunes and on www.mark42.net. And don't forget, here on the East Coast, the end of October, the Sunday, the 25th, we are going to be at Time Lord Fest. Mark and myself will be out there hosting panels with Sophie Aldred and the Ken Spivey Band. And the following weekend, the weekend of Halloween itself, from the 30th to the 1st of November, we'll be at Hurricane Who. Well, we will actually be doing not only panels, but our famed Mark Who 42 match game. Don't forget to check that out. If you are in the Orlando or Tampa area, do come out there and check it out. Tickets are still available for both online at www.timelordfest.com and www.hurricanewho.com. DrHoop.com. Anything going on your side of the coast there, guys?
Yep, actually, it is less than 2 weeks until Great Basin Geek Con. Which is the 17th and 18th of October. And hey, admission for that is absolutely free. It is going to be at the Reno Old Town Mall. All you got to do is just walk in the door. You are there. We're pretty much taking over the mall, aren't we, Trish?
Oh, wow.
Yep, we are.
We're pretty much going to be all over the mall. I do know that our panel, the Doctor Who panel, will be Sunday the 18th, and that will be in the meeting room of Roundtable Pizza. And I will be moderating the author panel on Saturday. And we'll have a table there for Weekend TARDIS Reno.
That is awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome. So you've got no excuse. You've got something going on both sides of the coast to take care of your Whovian needs. And also online at Facebook's site, The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS, every single day throughout the month until Halloween. We will be having music videos, movies, clips, and memes and pictures of the Traveling TARDIS celebrating the 31 days of Halloween, going all the way up and to Halloween itself. So from everybody here at Mark Who 42, including myself, Eduardo-m-Freyre, and Trish-helm, everybody, there's nothing wrong with it. Just keep it simple. We'll catch you next time. See you for now.
I have to die. I can't change what's already happened. There are rules. There's nothing you can do.
Mark Who 42 was written and presented by Mark Baumgarten, Patricia Helm, Christian-basel, Patty-Hawkins, and Eduardo-m-Freyre, with Wink Taylor as the Doctor. This show was edited, produced, and directed by Mark Baumgarten. Please visit mark42.net and register to join and be a part of the Whoniverse Army. We can be contacted by email at mark@mark42.net with the subject line ? If you have worked on Doctor Who or are working on a project relating to Doctor Who and want to be on our radio show, please email our media relations director, Christian-basel, at mark42media@yahoo.com. Doctor Who and its properties are owned by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. This show is owned and copyrighted by Mark Baumgarten, 2015. You're listening to Krypton Radio.